Hi there, welcome to another webinar, the Women's Sexual Energetic Anatomy. We're getting started, so if you're joining us, welcome. So, hi, welcome. Okay, so I'm just going to mute all of you or make sure that you're muted just while you're entering the webinar. There will be times during this webinar where I'll be asking for feedback, you can share, but for now we'll just have everybody be muted so that the sound quality is really good for everybody who's listening. Okay, welcome Olive, Ashley, and Vivian. So this is a really great topic. I am so excited to share on this topic because this is an area that I have been working on myself for a long time. It seems like I've been working on boundaries for lifetimes. I don't know. A lot of the research that I have done for this webinar in particular has also informed me quite a bit more. I feel like I'm able to sniff out sneaky situations where I may be having my boundaries crossed or not be making really strong boundaries, and even more so from the information that I've researched for this webinar. So I hope you can get a lot out of it and learn from everybody else's experience and mistakes. So here we go. First, just a little funny quote. Mom, thanks for teaching me about boundaries by never observing any. So this is just a little joke, just to show us that, you know, often we learn or didn't learn about our boundaries growing up in our family life, depending what your parents were like. Depending on whether you've had trauma or not, you have to work extra hard on having boundaries. This is something that we're going to go into. If you're an empath, you may have to work extra hard on having boundaries. We're going to talk about that too. So lots of different topics to talk about. But first, I just wanted to share a little bit about 2019. And this is something that I posted on Facebook. And I'd been listening to one of my favorite astrologers, Kai Pacha from New Paradigm Astrology, always seems to be talking about the stuff that I'm experiencing. Go figure. I guess we're all really tuned in. So I was really tuning into this recently, over the last few months, actually, becoming a lot better at recognizing where I need to have stronger boundaries for myself. And I feel like it's coming about after learning different lessons around self-worth, which are around the third chakra. So we're going to talk about the third chakra. That's the chakra for boundaries. So in 2019, according to Kai Pacha, we will see a big expansion energetically. So a lot of us will start to feel this connection of like feeling more like you're connected to everything that is, or feeling one with all that is in 2019. So the challenge under this influence of expansion is to maintain your boundaries. So because you're going to be expanding, it's going to be important to make space and make time to reflect on your purpose. So what you're really committed to, what is important to you, and your soul's evolutionary growth going forward, and all of the long-term goals that you have in mind for yourself. So he was warning about not getting caught up in mundane little day-to-day things that don't matter as much, because all the things that happen to us all day long can dictate where we put our energy. It's important for us to have stronger boundaries around this time so that we can expand in a way that is really in alignment with our truest, highest self. So 2019, according to Kaipacha, is about coming out with who we are, being honest with ourselves, discovering our truth, our integrity, and birthing our unique individuality. And individuality and coming into our individuality is also very central to the topic of boundaries. And he warns to beware of the tendencies to escape. So you might want to escape your own power by going into addictive patterns, avoiding yourself and your incredible power that you're stepping into. So take it easy on the wine. Okay, so what are healthy boundaries? Well, often conversations about healthy boundaries center and revolve around a concept of being able to say yes and say no. So how often do you wish that you could say a clear no, but you end up saying yes or maybe when you don't really mean it? So healthy boundaries are when you can say yes or no, and you are okay when others also say yes or no to you. But first, if you're not used to even knowing how you feel about things, or knowing what you need and what you want, the first step, which I found very, very helpful, probably in my late 20s, early 30s, was an exercise to first help me check in and feel the feelings and sensations in my body around what a yes is and what a no is. So let's do that exercise together. So wherever you are, I'm just gonna get you to maybe close your eyes if you're sitting or if you're lying down. And I want you to tune in to something that is a definite yes for you, okay? So something that you love, something that gives you great pleasure, something that gives you great joy. And as you tune in, I want you to feel what that feels like in your body. So notice what your yes feels like in your body right now by bringing to mind something that is a definite yes for you, a joy, a pleasure, a passion of yours. Okay? So hopefully you felt something in your body that you can identify as your yes. Okay, so now we're going to imagine something that is a definite no for us. Something you do not enjoy, something you definitely don't like, something that you want to avoid, something that makes you feel bleh. Okay, so something that is a definite no. And again, close your eyes. Bring to your awareness what that thing is that's a no for you. And notice what it feels like in your body. Okay? Now, go back to the thing that is a yes. So bring that thing that's a yes back into your mind. Imagine you there, being, doing, feeling, enjoying this thing that's a definite yes for you. Okay, so you can switch back and forth between these two so you can feel what the difference is. Okay, now go back to the no again, just so that you can get used to feeling what the difference is between your yes and your no. Okay, so I hope you could feel something. Any of the participants who are on the call, you can feel free to unmute yourself if you just want to share a little bit about that exercise with us. What your yes felt like, what your no felt like. Had you done this exercise before? Does it feel clearer what a yes feels like to you or what a no feels like? Okay, so far everybody's quiet, no problem. We will just move on if nobody wants to share from that little example. Okay, so that can be incredibly helpful. So part of one of the things that I've learned about boundaries is even just that exercise of understanding what your yes and what your no is really important because it gets you in touch with your feelings and your sensations. And we all know that our real feelings and our real sensations are kind of like in our gut. So we can have a mental thought about, oh, what we think we should be doing. Oh yeah, we should be volunteering, or we should go to this event, or we should be going to that birthday because so-and-so invited us. So that's all up here in the mind. But as you get better at boundaries, you'll find that it requires you to actually learn yourself better. It requires you to learn how you're feeling, what you're feeling, what you need in any given moment. So this is all good. And it's really, really important to learn to own your no. So having studied and practiced Tantra for a long time, one thing that's very central to beginning on a tantric path, going to a tantric workshop or a retreat, often there will be an exercise about owning your no. So we'll often get into partners where we'll be sitting across from each other. And these exercises are usually around touch because we're sort of dealing with relationships and intimacy. So you may be sitting across from a stranger, and the stranger will ask you, may I stroke your arm? And the first part of the exercise is to say no to everything that this person asks you, just so that you can get used to saying no, so that you can get used to feeling like that's an option, so that you can get used to any feelings that you might have about disappointing the other person that's sitting across from you, and just to really own your no. And then we usually move into another exercise where instead of just saying no, 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 no all the time, after we've gotten used to saying no and owning the no, then you can kind of like tune in a little bit more to like, oh, well, actually, it might feel good to have my shoulders massaged. So, you know, you might feel in and check in, and you might get a yes, and you might say, yes, you can massage my shoulders. So, one of the main reasons we don't say no is because it can be uncomfortable. It can create conflict. The person you're saying no to might get upset, or at least that's your perception. So, but the truth is that keeping the peace by saying yes or maybe when you really mean no means that you're violating your boundaries. So one thing that we have to learn when we're learning boundaries is you kind of have to get comfortable with feeling uncomfortable when you say no. So It might make you sweat a little bit. It might make you feel a little bit like, oh God. If you're empathic like I am, you will already know that the person doesn't want to hear no, or because you can read it and you can feel it in their energy. So my advice to you is just to kind of like be able to push through that feeling of uncomfortability and really, really deliver your truth. And once you get through that uncomfortability and practice it a little bit more, it'll get easier and easier. What I found can be easy at first when you're just learning how to do this is somebody asks you to do something that you maybe don't want to do. So you know that it's a no for you, but you feel too uncomfortable to face the person and say no, is you don't have to say anything right away. You can take your time. You can ask the person if you can sit with it, if you can meditate on it, if you can get back to them later. And then that way you can really sit with how you're feeling and really understand what it is that you need to do in that moment. And then you can answer them later, and you can answer them in person, or if it's still really uncomfortable for you, you can answer them in writing through emails or text. So just a few little strategies to help you at the beginning of your taking ownership over your no phase. So yeah, we've talked a little bit about like why it is that we do say no. So several reasons why we say yes when we don't want to. And I feel that this good girl syndrome is a huge factor. So a lot of us have learned that in order to be accepted or loved, that we have to be compliant and we have to be agreeable to be liked, accepted, and loved. The truth is that this takes a huge energetic toll on us and can leave us feeling exhausted if we're always doing what we think other people want us to do. So we're managing everybody else's expectations of ourselves, and that is virtually impossible to do. You will have adrenal burnout if you continue to try to make everybody around you happy. So we really need to kind of get used to checking in with how you feel and being authentic with the people around you. There is another exercise that we do in the Tao Tantra teacher training. So I am a teacher on a 5-week Tao Tantra teacher training. We learn the Taoist practices, Taoist Qigong, and we kind of like start to dip our toes into topics around our sexuality and becoming comfortable with the power within us. And the good girl, rebel girl exercise is definitely one of my favorites. So in this exercise, we get together, usually it's with a partner, again, somewhat similar to the last exercise that I described. So in this one, you play the good girl. So your partner might be sitting across from you and they might say, oh, I think your hair looks better up. Would you just like put your hair back and let me see what that's like? And so when you're being the good girl, your response is, oh, like this, and you'll put your hair up, and then your partner might say, that looks great. Yeah, that looks better like that. And they might ask you to stand up and turn around 5 times and sit down. So when you're the good girl, you just say yes to everything and you do everything that a person who is your partner tells you to do. And then we shift from the good girl to the rebel girl. And the rebel girl basically says no to everything that their partner asks them to do. So the interesting thing about the rebel girl is, although you're being a total rebel and you're saying no, even when you feel like maybe you'd want to say yes. So you're still giving that person power over you, because their request will dictate that your answer is always the opposite or a no. So, and then at some point, after playing with the dynamic of the good girl and saying yes all the time, and the rebel girl and saying no all the time, we want to come into the middle, and we want to find the middle girl. So the middle girl is authentic. And the middle girl or woman checks in with how she really feels. So that exercise of finding what your inner yes or your inner no is. Like, putting my hair back, yeah, actually my hair is kind of like in my face right now. So yeah, I think that feels good. I think I'm gonna put my hair back like that. Actually, no, there's too much of a breeze on my neck. I'm gonna take it back down again. So that's the middle girl. She's always tuning into how she feels about things. So again, coming down into the body, recognizing how you're feeling and what you're needing moment to moment by tuning in and checking into your body. Other reasons we say no, again, is we think that we will keep the peace and we will keep relationships intact. So some common thoughts that may occur are like these examples down here. If we just keep quiet, nobody will fight. If we just keep it positive, everybody will be happy. If we don't say anything, no one will get hurt. If we just let it go, everyone will be cool. So in reality, never speaking your truth can eat you alive from the inside out. And it can take you to a point in your relationship where you've cooperated some more. In fact, you're over cooperating. You're always over cooperating. And then what's going to happen once you've over cooperated for years or months or, decades in a relationship is you're going to hit a point where you've had enough. And usually what happens in that case is you go from over cooperation to under cooperation, and you oscillate between these two things. So you over cooperate, and then you're like, I'm done with this over cooperating, and then you just go in the opposite direction. So it can kind of create this real vacillation of like 1 minute you're like the angel in this other person's eyes, and the next minute you're like a monster. So this is a pattern. It's a pattern that I'm familiar with. Usually people who have the number 2 in their numerology. So if you add up the day and the month and the year of your birth, you will find out what your number is in numerology. And if you have a 2 is about cooperation and balance. So it's learning about how to cooperate in a way where you're not over cooperating all the time, so that you can have balance in your relationships and not really go over to the other side of under cooperating because you've over cooperated. Okay, we're going to touch a little bit on trauma and boundaries. So a person can have trauma for their entire life and not know that they have trauma. Trauma can kind of come up at any time. So in my experience, I'm 45 years old, and I realized that I suffered from PTSD probably around the age of 42. And there is a large percentage of the population that suffers from trauma. Somewhere between 65 and 75% in different studies that I've seen of people have experienced a trauma. So, so as it says here, if you've had a trauma, you may have had to work extra hard at saying no. Trauma can rob a person's sense of safety and the opportunity to explore their own identity, especially in early life. So victims of abuse sense a loss of control or can sense a loss of control over their own bodies and their own lives. So it's hard to defend your rights if you grow up in a home where mental, emotional, or physical boundaries are not respected. So if you've had trauma, it can be extra hard to learn how to stand up for yourself, because you have kind of suffered an injury to your sense of self-worth, and you may have had your boundaries infringed upon and crossed in a major way when you're young, or even when you are an adult. So often when our boundaries have been infringed upon, we feel, you can feel helpless, like a victim. You can even feel worthless. You can really internalize a lot of what's happened to you. So standing up for yourself can be extra, extra hard. Also, trauma tends to have the effect of ungrounding us. So Peter Levine talks about how when we've had a trauma, it seems to like sweep our feet out from underneath us. And it's harder for us to ground. It's harder for us to be in the physical body and feel our feelings and our sensations because there's been a big hurt. And the way that we protect ourselves and the way the brain protects ourselves is sometimes by disassociating. So coming out of the body and disassociating from physical feelings because it's too painful to feel the body. So those who've had trauma have to work extra hard to ground, to connect down to the earth, to connect into their bodies, to feel their feelings, and to feel safe in their body. So working with the body and working with the sensations and working with affirmations that you are safe and really connecting and physically touching your body are some exercises that are recommended for coming into the body. One thing that I found to be extremely helpful, which I had already gravitated towards before I knew that I had PTSD or trauma, was Qigong. So anything that's really physical exercise, but Qigong actually physically, energetically helps you to ground into the earth and anchor yourself, and also to be aware of really subtle sensations in your bodies. There's many, many practices that can help you do this. So healthy boundaries is not tolerating abuse or disrespect. And unhealthy boundaries is having a high tolerance for abuse and disrespect. So if you've had issues with trauma, get some help by someone who has experience, a professional who has experience working with people with trauma. Okay, so let's get into some more nitty-gritty about what healthy boundaries are and what they're not. So healthy boundaries is a strong sense of identity and respecting yourself. Unhealthy boundaries is your identity consists of what you think others want you to be. Healthy boundaries is you expect reciprocity in a relationship. You share responsibility and power. Unhealthy boundaries is you have no balance of power in your relationship. So you're either overly controlling and dominant, or you're passive and dependent. I've been noticing this one in relationships and friendships. If you are, whoops, go back. If you feel like you are the one that's making all of the effort in a relationship, that's an imbalance of reciprocity. If you feel like you're always the one that's reaching out to a person, a friend, a partner, to connect, that's an imbalance of reciprocity in a relationship. If you feel like you're always the one who's listening and holding space, and the other person is not listening to you and not holding space, but they're maybe just dumping on you all the time, that's an imbalance of reciprocity and power in a relationship. So just looking at that balance is a good way to understand. You deserve somebody who's able to hold space for you, who's able to listen for you, listen to you, and vice versa. That you also, the other person that you're in relationship with deserves your energy and your time in a positive way. Okay, so healthy boundaries. You know when the problem is yours and when it belongs to somebody else, versus you take on others' problems as your own. So because I am an empath, I can definitely identify with having had this problem. Empaths feel what everybody else is feeling around them until you learn how to really control and manage your empathic skills. So just my own personal experience, and we'll also get you to share on these topics here in a minute once we've just gone through all of them. I had a mantra for a while, and my mantra was, that's not my shit. That's not my shit. That's not my shit. That's not my shit. So as an empathic person, I was learning how to, first of all, know myself and know when something was up, when I could feel something, whether it was mine, whether it was the other person's, or just in a relationship and in a connection, when a person was bringing something up and it wasn't mine, it was theirs. Yeah, that was a huge learning curve. So we'll talk a little bit more about empaths later. And then the last point here on this page, healthy boundaries, is you know your own wants and needs and feelings, and you communicate them effectively. And the unhealthy side, your wants and needs and feelings are secondary to others and are sometimes or always determined by others. So I can see how this might be the situation if you are a young mother and you're looking after young children. For the first 3 years of a child's life, they are literally stuck to your body. And so you have to address their wants and needs all the time. They are secondary to other people. So feel free to join in the conversation here. If any of you, Olive or Liz or Vivian, want to share on any of your personal experiences of these 4 examples. You can just unmute yourself. Okay. Okay, if nobody wants to share at this point. Oh, here we go. Somebody's saying something in the chat. Okay, Liz would like to join, but her daughter is in and out. Okay. Oh, somebody is here and it's 4:30 a.m. You're in a different time zone. Okay. Well, thanks for being here. And let's just go on to the next page and you can listen some more. Okay, so more healthy versus unhealthy boundaries. So on the healthy side, you value your feelings. Well, first of all, you have to know what your feelings and your wants and your needs are. I find that's difficult for women because we're always used to looking after the needs of others, especially children or families. So first you have to know what your wants and your needs and your feelings are, and then you have to value your feelings and your opinions as much as others. On the unhealthy side, you tend to absorb the feelings of others. You rely on the feelings, opinions, or ideas of others. So that that would require some work if you're always absorbing the feelings of others. On the healthy side, you're able to ask for help when you need it. You know your limits. And you know what? This takes practice. Sometimes it takes practice to understand and know what your limits are. And then you also let others define their limits. On the unhealthy side, you allow others to define your limits, or you to try to define others' limits. So one thing that stands out for me around this example is our modern work life. Often when we go to work, we're working for an organization or a company or working for other people, unless you work for yourself. I'd work for myself because I don't really like other people to define my limits. I'm a bit of a rebel in that way. Um, and I have, for example, taken I guess, the opportunity to not work on the days where I'm menstruating. But how many employers do you think would be stoked about all of their female employees taking off time during their menstrual cycle? It's celebrated and accepted in some areas in the world, but this is just like one case, where others impose their limits on us, and we feel like we have to show up when we're sick or when we're not feeling well, and or we could just be having a stressful family time or something going on in our life, and really not really be feeling up to going to our job that day. So I encourage you to take your allowances of self-care or sick days when you need them, or to get support with things that are going on in your life. Healthy boundaries. You're committed to and responsible for exploring and nurturing your full potential. On the unhealthy side, you ignore your inner voice and you allow others' expectations to define your potential. And this shows up a lot with people around their bodies, and being responsible for nurturing your body and listening when your body is trying to give you messages. And many people's bodies many people's bodies give them messages through pain, through illness, and through disease. So one thing that we all need to get better at is really paying attention to our feelings, our sensations, our bodies, to that quiet inner voice, even just allowing ourselves the time to sit and meditate, go for a walk in nature, in the forest, to be able to listen to ourselves, to really understand what is going on inside of us. And on the healthy side, you don't compromise your values or integrity to avoid rejection. And on the unhealthy side, you compromise your values and beliefs in order to please others and avoid conflict. So this does sound familiar to me. think I've lost a few friends who were trying to please others and avoid conflict, and they had to make a choice between me and someone else, which would be a really awful position to be in. But anyway, there's many different ways this can play out. Oh, let's go back. Would anybody like to share any personal experiences or any comments about anything that we've covered on this page? Okay, a little bit of a quiet group this evening, no problem. Okay, a few more points here on healthy versus unhealthy boundaries. On the healthy side, you share personal information gradually in a mutually sharing, trusting relationship. On the unhealthy side, you share personal information too soon before establishing mutual trust and sharing. So this is an interesting point that I have become more familiar with just, I would say, in the last 6 months. Because I do have a history of trauma, I have experienced getting very close with people really quickly. Although I don't think I was one of those people who would, overshare and share too much personal information really quickly. But I'm sure all of you have had experiences where you've been talking to somebody and you can tell that they're really sharing way too much information too soon. That can be a sign that that person has had trauma and they have a difficult time with their boundaries. I feel like you could also take this example and say you share yourself. So, for example, in dating, in the situation of dating, I find that a lot of women, maybe men, make the mistake of sharing their heart, being really vulnerable, and sharing their entire body, maybe a little bit too soon before they really have established a strong sense of trust in a relationship. And establishing trust takes some time. I actually read a book called How to Avoid Marrying a Jerk. And the author of the book said that it takes about 3 months of hanging out with somebody and spending time with them before you really start to see all of the person's patterns. So this author was a relationship and marriage counselor, and his recommendation was to first establish this mutually trusting relationship. So you need to know that you can rely on this person, that you can trust them. And that takes at least 3 months. And it's only after that that you should really start totally sharing your heart and sharing your body with this person. And when I first read the book, I was like, oh yeah, okay. How often would I wait 3 months before getting involved with somebody if there was a lot of energy and a lot of attraction between us? And to be honest, I didn't think that I could wait that long. If there was a lot of energy and a lot of attraction, that I wanted to maybe become physical with that person a lot sooner than 3 months. But now that I have gone through so many different relationships that were with people who actually weren't really emotionally available, and just like a lot of sort of false starts or relationships that didn't really go anywhere, I realized that I really need to follow this advice of getting into relationships, especially if you really want to be in one that lasts. to get into them gradually, and get into them gradually after you know that you can really trust that person. So, and then the last point here is you're responsible for your own happiness and fulfillment, and you allow others to be responsible for their own happiness and their fulfillment. So it's up to you to make yourself happy. On the unhealthy side, you feel responsible for others' people's happiness and fulfillment. And sometimes you rely on your relationship to create that for you. So as a single person, I had an idea that maybe being in a relationship was going to be fulfilling to me. And I've become a little bit wiser to that. Now that I've had some time to really spend some time alone and get to know myself, I know I can't really rely on anybody else to make me happy other than myself. And not even my friends, you know, like I've got to go and do the things that make me happy. Even if I don't have anybody to hang out with on a weekend, you know, I still go for a hike by myself, or go shopping by myself, or do the things that I would like to do, you know, try to find people to come and do them with me, but yeah, not rely on other people to make us happy. And anybody want to share any personal experiences or reflections on these points before we move on? Okay. So I wanted to make a little special note here about empaths and boundaries. So if you're empathic, you know that you pick up a lot of signals everywhere you go, from people, plants, animals, all living things. And a lot of it is not relevant to you when you're first starting out learning how to manage your empathic abilities. So what I found helpful was that making the intention to allow only what is relevant for you to be felt. So you're basically saying, okay, universe, I know I can feel everybody else's stuff. I don't want to feel anything that is not absolutely relevant to me. What is relevant can be an opportunity to share with somebody. It can be an opportunity to help somebody. It can be an opportunity to listen. It can also be an opportunity to increase your skills as a healer. Maybe you'll be given an opportunity that will help you to understand how you can use your healing skills with other people. But the important thing to realize is you call the shots and you set the limits and ask only what is relevant to be felt. And you may also have to set your limits by just, if you're really, really sensitive, first by trying that, but maybe you might, until that skill gets stronger and you only really let in what you want or what you need to let in, you may have to just spend some time alone or in nature, just to be with yourself and your own energy and your own vibration to really know what that feels like. For empaths, and also I teach pretty much everybody who is around others. So we often will absorb the feelings, the emotions of the people who we live with, people who are closest to us, our partners, our friends, our parents. A grounding practice and regular grounding like Qigong can really help you to ground the feelings of others so that it doesn't stick into you. So grounding is like the feelings and the emotions come in and then they go down through you. So it's like they don't stick in you, they just pass through you into the ground. If you like, on the first page of my Intune Holistics website, I have a Qigong exercise specifically for this. It's called smoothing Qi. You inhale your arms up and you exhale down. You scan down through your body, all the way down your legs, down to your feet, and into the ground that you're standing on. And that helps to smooth your own Qi and smooth any chaotic energy, but also helps you to release and let go and ground stuff that's not yours. And the other biggest piece of advice that I can give for empaths is to know thyself. So the more time you spend with your own energy and get to know yourself, and this can just come about through experience and through getting older and learning, you'll be able to discern what is yours and what is not yours. And of course, as we mentioned before, that means listening to you and getting into your body, getting into your feelings and your own sensations and your energy. Again, Qigong or meditation are great practices to feel your own subtle feelings and sensations and to understand yourself. Time and experience helps with this, as does having a counselor or a therapist or someone with whom you can share about yourself too, who can help you see yourself clearly. Now, boundaries are a function of the third chakra. So speaking in the chakra language, here's a diagram over here. We've got the crown, third eye, throat, heart, and then the solar plexus is where the third chakra is, right in the middle of the body. So our sense of self originates in the third chakra. So when we're developing as children, our sense of individuality, of who we are separate from everybody else, comes from the third chakra. And so you can sort of understand how if a child is not given the opportunity to really develop their sense of individuality as a result of trauma, or maybe living with parents who have poor boundaries, that development can be stunted and it can end up causing issues in the third chakra itself. So the third chakra allows you to know yourself. It allows you to live with self-confidence because you're centered in yourself. So there's something that I've noticed a lot from doing medical intuitive assessments with many people, and I call it your locus of control. So many people have a locus of control that is outside of themselves. So that means that the outer world, the outer environment, the outer situations, the outer people dictate what I do or how I feel or how I spend my time, as opposed to my locus of control being inside myself. So it's kind of like your locus of control is like your reference point. So the stronger your third chakra is and the stronger your solar plexus is, the stronger your locus of control will be right here in your body, connected to your own feelings, your own needs, your own wants, and your own self. So many people are living with their locus of control outside of themselves. So this is just something to be aware of. And this can help us to having a strong third chakra helps us to live with self-confidence and with willpower and with strength. And it allows us to set boundaries and be assertive without being aggressive. So it's about owning yourself and owning who you are and what you need and what you want. And that's just the way it is. It's not like, I need to get what I want, in an aggressive way. It's just like, no, this is who I am. This is what I need. I know my limits. I know I need this. So that's how it is. Yeah, ownership. So physical issues that can arise from problems with the solar plexus include low self-esteem, an inability to set or maintain boundaries, codependency, lack of self-control, depression, anxiety, or addiction. And the solar plexus is in this area. Here we have, okay, on the right side, we have our liver and our gallbladder. And in the middle, we have the pancreas. And on the left side, we have the stomach and the spleen. And in the back of the solar plexus, we have the adrenal glands, and the kidneys are down here, and the adrenal glands sit on top of the kidneys. So we have a lot of digestive organs in the solar plexus. And people who have issues with the third chakra, with boundaries, may also find that they have problems with the organs in this area. Ulcers happen in the stomach, poor digestion, inability to digest food, pancreas problems, not producing enzymes that you need, gas, nausea, hypoglycemia. Hypoglycemia is an issue of the pancreas, but then also asthma, arthritis, organ problems like spleen, liver, stomach, kidney, adrenals, nerve pain, fibromyalgia, and difficulty gaining or losing weight. So a really simple exercise that you can do is you can work directly with your solar plexus. So if you get yourself centered, you close your eyes, you focus on your breath, and you can even just start to create like an energy ball. You can smile. When you smile into your body, you really open your energy up. When you connect down to the earth and connect up to spirit and allow that energy to come in, you can start to really open your energy up. So just kind of like getting inside of yourself, into your breath, fully connected, and opening your energy up through smiling. And then you can just use the energy of your own hands and just turn your solar plexus chakra and work with the energy in this area. And just set an intention that you'd like to allow anything that is creating poor boundaries or blocking this chakra to be cleared. And you can imagine that beautiful yellow color as you work with the energy of the solar plexus to clear out anything that is blocking the third chakra. So that's just a little energy exercise that you can do whenever you need to. So yeah, there's many examples from our lives that we could talk about around boundaries. And again, if anybody wants to share anything from their life in the areas of dating or relationships, in the areas of children and family, or even in the area of work. If you want to share any personal examples, you can go ahead, unmute yourself, join in the conversation. Maybe while you're thinking about it or not thinking about it. One thing that I notice in my work is especially women who started having their children really young. So maybe you had your first child when you're 19 or 18, 20, 21. And so you're basically kind of thrust into the life of having children and being responsible for these other little beings before you really got to know yourself. Up until about 3 years old, a child is completely dependent on the mother's body and the mother's energy for its survival. So it's very understandable that these boundaries are often blurred because your body is sustaining that little child's life. What's really important for young mothers to realize is that, you know, you may have quite a few children, one after the other, one after the other, and you're always in demand. But once your youngest child reaches the age of 3, or your child reaches the age of 3, that's a good time to start taking your time back, take your life back, get some help from your partner or grandparents or babysitters to make that time for yourself so that you can replenish your own energy. The way we replenish our own energy is by doing the things that we enjoy and doing the things that we like and finding what fulfills us. That's an example of healthy boundaries, is working on your own potential as a person by fulfilling your own needs. And even just contemplating what those needs are. So, so I've recently been working with a woman who has stomach issues and liver issues, a lot of third chakra issues and boundary issues with her children. Her husband's working full-time. She's working full-time, but, you know, we kind of worked on a few strategies to get the kids helping out more in the house, having like a very defined chore time that's the same time every day. So the kids know and the father knows, everybody's on the same program, so that she doesn't feel like she's the one that has to do everything in the house. So just an example from a client that I've been working with. So yeah, anybody else have any other examples or anything that they'd like to share from their own life? Okay, there are so many directions we could go with this conversation, but I hope that I've given you a good understanding of what healthy boundaries are and how to stand up for your healthy boundary, for your own healthy boundaries, how to maybe work with some of the energy around the solar plexus, how to maybe tune in a little bit more to your own sensations and feelings, your gut, what your yes and your no is, so that you can have a nose for detecting when you are either when your boundaries are being crossed or even when you're crossing your own boundaries. There's always that ricochet effect. If you don't draw the line in the sand here and you draw it way out here, then you're going to notice that your boundaries can get crossed more easily. So learning to rein in a little bit. Of course, when we're feeling safe, we can let our boundaries out. If we're feeling a little bit more stressed and less safe, that's a time to pull the boundaries in. So our boundaries can change. They don't always have to be rigid and the same. Depends how we're feeling. Sometimes we go through periods of our life where we may be experimenting. So we may be we may be just trying different things. We may be doing things a little bit differently than we used to, and that's okay. We can all go through these experimental phases. Maybe you want to try pushing your boundaries a little bit. There's different stages that you can be in your life. You can be in a healing phase. You can be in an experimental phase. You can be in a curious phase. And your boundaries will sort of depend on where you are in these different phases. So I hope this webinar has given you some ideas about how to have healthy boundaries so that you can be healthy and happy and energized in all ways in your life. So thanks for joining me, and have a great night.